It's time for a game we call Overrated or Underrated.
Okay.
I'm going to read out a list of things, and you're going to tell me if you think they're overrated or underrated.
Jonas Vingegaard is underrated.
That's not on the list. Gravel stages at the Tour de France, or just Grand Tours in general.
Overrated or underrated? They're not underrated, are they? Because people get desperately excited about them. So I've got to choose, haven't I?
You have to
So they're
choose,
probably overrated.
Oh, wow. The logic is correct. They are. I love them.
Yeah.
But they are very well rated, aren't they?
Yeah.
Riders hate them, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do hate them. But I mean, the Tour de France got away with it big time this year. I mean, none of the big names lost any time in a kind of like unfortunate incident, and actually it proved to be an amazing spectacle, didn't it?
It was great.
There was that moment where there was a really strong breakaway, and then the GC kind of like group had started to break up a little bit because Pogacar was being a lunatic, and Pogacar and Evenepoel dragged Vingegaard, who was just shadowing them, right the way across to the breakaway with such ridiculous ease. Those three just went noodled off the front and just went vroom, showed themselves at the breakaway, and we were thinking, are they just going to carry on now or what? Are they going to ride this, And these were proper riders in the break that day, and they were looking around just going, well, they've just made a mockery of us, haven't they? By how much superior they are. And then the three of them just dropped back again. And I thought that was amazing.
Interestingly, going back to your footage that your book is based on.
Gravel.
Yeah.
The Tour de France was a gravel race.
But that's presumably because roads weren't really a thing.
There was no tarmac.
So it was probably all gravel.
The first Tour de France in 1903, the first stage was from Paris to Lyon, 486 kilometres on gravel.
How long would that take?
Well, I mean, they used to start in the middle of the night. They used to start at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, ride until dawn came up,
Avoid
until the sun
moats.
came up, and then carry on.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, it took me a while when I got that film delivered and started looking at it. I couldn't figure out why the first thing you see is they used to have all these checkpoints along the way. Riders would sign their name, and the first thing you see in this summary of the day's racing is the checkpoint at a place called Lorient, which is already 100 plus kilometers into the stage. I couldn't understand why they didn't show us the start of the stage. And then I went, oh yeah, because it was the middle of the flipping night. And the cameras in 1923 wouldn't have been able to cope with the darkness at all.
Of course.
So they had to wait until the sun came up to start filming it.
What I find fascinating about it is you have lots of ultra endurance events which are popping now, whether it be in cycling or running or whatever sport. And essentially, a lot of the model of these events is the Tour de France when it started.
Yeah.
Because you have these super long running events or cycling events where it might be 500 kilometers and therefore people are doing night stints, or then you've got the multi-day ones as well. But ultimately, it's essentially various versions of the Tour de France at the beginning. It's fascinating. Mm. Shall we move on to the next one? Yes. We have King of the Mountains and sprint competitions at the Tour de France.
Ooh.
We can split these up if you think one's better rated.
Well, let's do them let's take that in I would say, I've got opinions about this actually. King of the Mountains, underrated. Points competition, overrated. And here's my justification for that, right? The King of the Mountains competition is a constant fascination for me, and I think it's I think they are tinkering with it and borderline ruining it by giving skewing it in favour of big summit finishes that are inevitably going to be taken by the general classification riders. Yep. Now, the economics behind that are quite simple. That the big supermarket chain that sponsors the King of the Mountains jersey, they want Tadej Pogacar to win that jersey. Oh. Because they want, for their own PR purposes, Tadej Pogacar standing on the top of the podium in the Champs-Élysées in the jersey. And with respect, they don't want Simon Geschke in that jersey with respect to Simon Geschke.
That makes so much sense.
That meant that Simon Geschke, who came damn near, very close to winning it a couple of years ago, ended up in floods of tears at the sheer unfairness of that competition, because it should be, in my opinion, a reward for continuing day after day attacking and picking your opportunity and strength and resilience and toughness. And unfortunately, fewer and fewer riders are interested in competing for that competition because they know ultimately that 9 times out of 10 it's going to be won by Tadej Pogacar, Chris Froome or Jonas Vingegaard, right? So I think that's a real shame. So I think that is an underrated competition. And this whole notion of, shouldn't it be for the best climber? It's the king of the mountains after all, and the best climber is Tadej Pogacar or whatever. That's not the point.
No.
You're fundamentally misunderstanding the point of the King of the Mountains competition. It's a breakaway prize. That's what it is. Get your heads around that, and then we'll understand the beauty of it.
One thing that was awesome about the stages this year, Jonas Abrahamsen was in it for a week and a half.
Yeah, first week, yeah.
And as a fan watching that, I probably wouldn't know his name otherwise.
Exactly that.
It introduces you to a new rider, and it also gives you something interesting to talk about.
And focus on, yeah.
And focus on when it's a boring day.
And
you know?
it animates the race in unexpected fashions. Especially the more teams and riders you've got invested in that competition, the more dynamic the race becomes, the less formulaic the breakaway becomes. Even that formation stage when the flag drops, very often you'll get kind of like that instant attack that sticks and there's 3 riders and it's done. Well, not if you've kind of thought more about giving more classifications, more classified mountains, and really kind of like giving an incentive. And there were a few days at the Tour de France this year that were worrying, right, for the future of the spectacle. When on sprinters' days there wasn't even an attempt at a breakaway. Like, you just had this unedifying, understandable but unedifying sight of the peloton just rolling along like they're in a sportive.
Boring days.
That's not good for the. That doesn't. If that kind of tendency beds in and becomes, very much the grammar of the race, then that's troubling, actually. So but the organisers need to think about incentivising the breakaway. And King of the Mountains competition does that. Points competition is a little bit overrated, I think, because take nothing away from Biniam Girmay, which is a truly historic achievement this year. Genuinely, probably, actually, in terms of the sport, possibly the most significant and important green jersey ever.
Agreed. Yeah.
Biniam Girmay. And he did it in great style as well. But I can't remember that competition really going to the wire for a long time. I can't really remember the last time we had a proper kind of scrum. It doesn't seem to shape the race particularly. I don't really know sometimes what it's there for. And I don't know how much sprinters care about it particularly, because everything is stacked towards a stage win. So in my opinion, it's the least interesting and important of those jerseys. I actually prefer sometimes the battle for the white jersey to the green jersey. So I think it's slightly overrated, the green jersey.
I have a theory that the day of the pure sprinter is over.
Well, that's the Cavendish theory, isn't it? That's what he says.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he's often saying, they just make it so difficult for us,
Yeah, it's so fast now. It's so competitive. It's so marginal that it's a different race. And I think the green jersey, like Biniam Girmay, does not look like the type of person that was winning sprints 10 years ago.
No.
Well, for more than
he looks
one
like
reason.
a climber.
Well, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
He'd actually physiologically look like a climber.
Yeah.
It's quite strange.
Yeah. And he does climb very well.
Yeah.
He's much more of an all-rounder. I guess you could argue Sagan was a bit of an all-rounder.
Well, Sagan was such an important character in that. I genuinely think Sagan was the template, the model for everything that we're seeing now.
Yeah.
Without Sagan, in a way, there is no Wout van Aert. There is no Julien Alaphilippe. There is no Mathieu van der Poel doing all these kind of crazy there is no Tom Pidcock in a way. So Sagan was the one who broke the mold and started to shatter this very structured understanding of I'm a sprinter, I'm a climber, I'm a time trialist, and never the twain shall meet. You know?
That's a very good point. He is one of the early.
He was the vanguard.
Yeah, and the last on the list, the Vuelta.
It's a bit of a curate's egg, the Vuelta, isn't it? I think it's underrated, actually, because it does have its own unique characteristics. It's by far the youngest of the 3 Grand Tours. I think that's often in the wider cycling public not appreciated. It came onto the scene in a different place in the calendar. It used to be in April. Long time after the first 2 Grand Tours had been in existence for half a century. The Vuelta is very much the new kid on the block. It has what's very interesting about it these days is there are very few riders, borderline no riders, who at the beginning of the GC riders who at the beginning of the season say, I'm targeting the Vuelta. It just doesn't happen, which sounds like that means it's not very important. And maybe it is the least important of the 3, but that doesn't mean it's the least exciting, because then what you get is this fusion of riders who've excelled at the Giro d'Italia, skipped the Tour de France, and then come back in form for the Vuelta, often in preparation for the World Championships, but that's neither here nor there. And then you get the the riders who are hanging on to the fag end of their form from the Tour de France. And you get the Giro, often the best of the Giro and the Tour de France peloton coming together at the Vuelta. And so I think it's a very unpredictable and quite exciting mix of GC riders. And it does produce down the years, I think, very unpredictable and interesting GC battles. Although having said that, Primož Roglic wins it every year. So I don't know how unpredictable it is really, but he goes about winning it in an unpredictable fashion sometimes. Yeah, I love the Vuelta. So underrated.
Nice. Thank you very much. Well, remember, if you want to suggest anything for overrated or underrated, please send it to wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk and we might read yours out on a future episode.
That's all for this week.
It is.
Thank you all for listening, and thank you to Ned.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Been very good fun.
And make sure you go and check out his show, or buy the book.
Or both.
Or both.
Or both.
He hasn't paid us to say that. Make sure you're following and or subscribing, and thank you once again. We'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.